Now, where will I find hope? It's in us. It's in moments like this. It's in the purpose and mission of the Levine Museum, right? We have to insist on imagining America anew. And in our daily lives, we have to figure out how to live together differently. And I think if we can figure this out in the South, oh my God, we have solved the riddle of the Sphinx in this country.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and don't nobody want to hear it, but it's like this, the South got something to say.
Hi, my name is Kevin Blackistone, alongside Dr. Robert Greene II.
Welcome to the award-winning podcast, Our New South, presented by the Levine Museum of the New South in Charlotte, North Carolina.
The Levine Museum connects the past to the future to realize the promises of a new South.
Follow the show, rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and here in Season 3, you can watch our conversations right here on YouTube.
All right, let's get to today's show.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased and thrilled to welcome to Our New South Dr. Eddie Glaude, the well-known and remarkable public intellectual who has written numerous works. And today we're going to talk to him a bit about how those works relate to the South. Dr. Glaude, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so excited to have a conversation with you.
Well, and I think this is going to be a great episode in particular because as I'm looking at the screen, it's three brothers with glasses. So this should be a great and profound interview, I can tell already.
Indeed.
All right. So I want to start our interview off by asking you a couple of questions about your upbringing. You were actually raised in Moss Point, Mississippi, which is a small rural community on the Gulf Coast. And could you tell us a bit about what it was like growing up in Mississippi and how those particular experiences shaped your view of the South?
Oh my goodness. So it was idyllic on a certain level. Moss Point is called the River City. So it's a small town where bayous cut through all the roads. It has a distinct smell. It's a mixture of the porgy plant and the paper mill and the distinct scent of the Gulf of Mexico. When you go downtown, you're literally in a bay. The oak trees and the magnolia trees had long, cascading in some ways, moss, Spanish moss, hence the name Moss Point, flowing from the trees. So it was beautiful. But, at the same time, it's a predominantly Black city, town, kind of held hostage by the shipyard in Ingalls, and these industries, at least Thicol was there, and Chevron and all of these things. So you would have these waves of layoffs. So the first thing that comes to mind is this contrast between, the actual physical environment, which is stunning, right, and the material conditions, which vary from poor to just, middle class and working class. So it's a beautiful experience, man. And I'm from the coast. So, I'm from the water. And so it's a different kind of Mississippi experience to be from the water. It just smells different. The trees are different. The rhythm is different than, say, in the Delta or in Jackson. So it's beautiful.
It's funny you mentioned water because I'm coming to you from Princeton University, Orangeburg, South Carolina.
Yeah.
But for us here, the Low Country is really important. And of course, Kevin Blackistone is coming to us from College Park, Maryland. And of course, Maryland's known for water and for all that, and crabs and Old Bay seasoning. But all three of us, have ties to the South. And I think for you, family is also really important as well. And I want to just ask a quick question about how the lives and careers of your parents also influenced your upbringing and what you experienced about the South as well.
Oh my goodness. Like so many of us, my relationship with my parents is one marked by extraordinary love and also complexity. My dad was the second African-American hired in the post office in Pascagoula, Mississippi. And my mother spent her life working, for the most part, the janitorial staff of Ingalls Shipyard. They basically grew up with us. So my mother had her first baby very early, like in the 9th grade, 10th grade. I have two sisters and a brother. I'm the baby. I look just like my father, who was basically 21 years old when I came into the world. And so it was stressful for them, I can say. But he could stare at me and scare the living daylights out of me. There was a way in which he understood the perils that awaited us, and he didn't want us to make his mistakes or their mistakes. And so we were raised in a very strict environment. The only thing we had responsibility was, do whatever he told us to do and get our schoolwork done. But it was unconditional love, to be honest with you, looking back on it. But while I was in it, I wanted to leave it desperately. So I left home at 16 to go to college. Basically, I was running away, and didn't know that, Mississippi is deposited in my gut. And how can I put this? I don't just look like my dad. All my discipline, my willingness to speak truth to power, my conviction comes from the way those people raised me in Mississippi. And it's just a beautiful thing to embrace now. It took me a long time before I started using Junior, but now I claim him in the best way I know how.
Well, from one son of a postal worker to another son of a postal worker.
That's that middle class existence, brother.
Exactly. Was anything more important to the Black middle class than the post office?
That's right.
So you mentioned that you get to Morehouse at age 16. You get a bachelor's degree, and you then go to other Black metropolises. You're now on the board of trustees at your alma mater, Morehouse, and you're a distinguished professor at Princeton University. So what got you, a Black boy from Moss Point, Mississippi, to Princeton University to do what you did? What is rooted in that Southern experience that helped you climb that tree?
Well, first thing I would say is grace. To make a journey from where I'm from, where there were no books in the house, really, just people reading newspapers. My sister was the first African-American valedictorian of our high school, and that's the first year that they had two, a white and a Black one. She went to Spelman, and I just trailed her. We were like, I think the first to finish college, I think. Couple tried to go, but they didn't finish. Of family members, not an immediate family. So I think, grace, just being in position and being prepared to receive what was the opportunity that was in front of me. But then there's something deeply Black and Southern. And I want to say it has something to do with Mississippi, and that's grit. A kind of grind, a kind of discipline that is tethered to, bound up with how I was raised. So my dad, going back to that man who would wake up in Mississippi heat every single day during the summer, fix himself. He had a rotating lunch. He had bologna and ham, a bologna sandwich and a ham sandwich. He would sweat so much, he would sweat the belts out rotten. They would rot with sweat. And he got up every single day with 4 kids. My oldest sister is severely handicapped. She wasn't supposed to live past 12. She's now 64. Right. 62, I'm sorry. And every single day outside of Sunday, and he had a rotating, they didn't take any vacation. He just took his vacation day across the year. So I was socialized in discipline. What it means to have a goal in front of you, what it means to be prepared to pursue it, what it means to hold yourself responsible for your failures and for your successes, and to be hard-nosed about who you take yourself to be. My dad used to say to me all the time, you don't need anybody to like you. You need the person you see in the mirror to like you. That's what you need to see. And, I remember my first achievement, Doc. I was supposed to, I was in the 4th grade, And the teacher was really berating me, and because I was one of the few black kids in this class, and I just got up and ran out and said, "You're racist," and ran out. And I knew I was going to get killed when I got home, because you don't get up out of a classroom in the Glaude household. And my dad had this nose to nose with teeth clenched. He said, "What'd she do? What'd she say?" And I told him what she said. And he said, "If anybody ever talks to you like that, you do what you do. You handle yourself. You speak your truth." So here's this man who could look at me and scare me, but was instilling in me from an early age what was necessary to succeed. So, when I got to Morehouse, how can I put it? They just simply started to sharpen and deepen what was already put in me. So now I believe, coming out of the Glaude household in Moss Point, Mississippi, and having the crown placed above my head at Morehouse, that I'm supposed to be in any room that I'm in. So, wherever I am, I'm supposed to be. And so I think it's that Southern formation. It's a particular way in which that Black grit gets encoded in who you are, that I think has been a part of my own effort to accept the grace that has put me in position to succeed.
And of course, you get your PhD, you're teaching religion, but now you are a public intellectual, and one who I certainly can say that I really enjoy your words, be they written or be they on the airways. But do you see yourself as using that platform to shape, redefine what is Southern culture, or what is Black Southern culture to the rest of the country and the rest of the world, or is it something else?
I never thought about it in that way. I am who I am. The accent can come out real thick when I'm talking to my mama. And part of what I want to say or how I say it is rooted in how I was formed. So what I take myself to be doing is thinking in public with others, with love, and with the hope for building a more just world, to bring the fullness of my bibliography to bear on the subject at hand with my heart. And that's shaped by the South. No matter where I am, I tell people I'm from Moss Point, Mississippi. I'm proud to be from a state that carries with it the very contradictions that define the nation. There's something so extraordinarily beautiful about where I'm from, and it's so dangerous at the same time. So those bayous that I talked about, they're full of water moccasins. Right. The Spanish moss trees and all this, the beautiful lush stuff, they have, all sorts of things in there. You never catch me camping because, nature is not nice from where I'm from. It's just beautiful from afar. So I think part of what I try to do is to bring the fullness of who I am in any space and to be authentically me. And if you want to unpack what that is or what that consists in, then it's Southern to the core.
Absolutely. And I think to add to that, as someone whose day job is as a historian, what I find compelling about your work is how much you incorporate American, Southern, and Black histories into what you talk about. And particularly in the book, Democracy in Black, you describe the South as both a specific place and a moral metaphor for America.
Yeah.
I'm curious in terms of how you see the South's history as being an integral part of the national history of democracy, of self-determination, of race and racism, especially in terms of this idea of what you refer to as the value gap in American history.
Yeah, I think the South has borne the burden of the country's racism. there's this idea that if only the South would get itself together, that somehow the nation would be all right. But, Malcolm X was clear, as long as you south of the Canadian border, you South, right? And so I think there's a sense in which the country has scapegoated the South for its national sins. There's something, of course, about, the region and slavery and Jim Crow and of course, before Jim Crow, redemption and reunion that set the stage for Jim Crow. Those ghosts still haunt the region. Blood soaks the soil of the region. But there's also something about the South that is quintessentially American. Imani Perry would say it's the heartbeat of the country, right? And of course, there are different Souths. Right? Mississippi ain't, Virginia. And that ain't West Virginia or Florida. So, different forms of the South. But where I'm from, the Black Belt, right? Where I'm from on the water, I think there is something about the contradiction. The divided soul of the nation is in full view. And all of the the ways in which that contradiction, the ways in which it is lived, the ways in which it is felt. You can see it in the poverty. You can see it in the diabetes. You can see it in the hypertension. You can see it in the ways in which the culture can't be disentangled. Soul food, for example, is a phrase of longing. It's folk who move from the South to the North, and then they describe what they ate. It's soul food, but it's the cuisine of the South. It's just differentiated by seasoning. Depending upon where you at, right? So I think there's something about, there's a reason why the music of the country comes from where we are, where we're from. And from my state in particular, there's a reason why the literature turns to the region, right? Because the contradiction is there, the beauty and the pathos, right? The virtue and the evil, all there. So you can't be melodramatic in the South. It's not about, clearly defined heroines and villains. It's too messy, right? It's too messy for that. So that's why it has to be labeled the villain at all times, because it's too complex for that, it seems to me. That's all we need. There's some Glaudes that don't look like me, right? That's all we need to know is the Baldwin talks about the violence of the South has something to do with the intimacy, right? That is evident under the cover of darkness. We're close in so many ways, and it's in our blood. And people want to deny it, but I think it's what it is. What it is. Does that make sense as an answer?
Oh, beyond making sense. I think it gets to the heart of what our podcast is actually about.
Since you mentioned Baldwin, who you just wrote about,
yeah,
how do you explain Baldwin as a Southerner? Given that he's from New York, he didn't come south until like 1957 and south for him was D.C. And then he proclaims himself a Southerner. Was there an attraction for you to Baldwin because of his Southernness?
No, not really. I think Baldwin was the writer that gave me license to be rageful, and then he taught me how to love and be rageful. And so it's something in his prose that opened up, right, how I see myself and how I understand the country and how I see myself in relation to the man that we began with. That's my dad, right? But Baldwin, how can I put this, Doc? When Baldwin's in his house, even in Harlem, he's hearing a Louisiana accent from his stepfather. He's hearing the Eastern Shore from his mama.
Oh, yeah.
So what he's going to eat when they had food, right? So the cuisine he's going to be cooking. So he's the first generation in some ways. He's that generation that is once removed from the South, from the Great Migration, his first phase. So he's Southern in his house. And so then when you read the stories about Jimmy cooking, because he loved to cook, And you wonder what he's cooking. And he loves to fry some chicken. And so there's a sense in which, the South touches him in concrete ways. And then that complex relationship with the stepfather sends him back to Louisiana to try to find him. And if we read, if we look at Heard It Through the Grapevine, which is a wonderful documentary with him, you see him return home, quote unquote. And that gives him a sense of rootedness in some ways. So I don't have to make him Southern, right? In any concrete sense. But I do know that his life, his worldview, when he longs for home, when he's in the Swiss mountains trying to finish Go Tell It on the Mountain, right? He's not longing for a Harlem that isn't touched by the South. He's longing for family. He's longing for the culture. He's longing for everything that makes him him.
Did you go through that in your journey after leaving Atlanta?
Yeah, once I left home, I was trying to leave Mississippi, man.
Right.
My closest partners was from New York. When I was in, his family, he got in trouble in New York. They moved him to this godforsaken place in Moss Point. And we became, I used to wear colored leaves and have my shell top Adidas on, trying to sound like I wasn't from Mississippi and the like. And, I go to Atlanta, I leave Atlanta, then I'm in Philly, I leave Philly, I'm in Brunswick, Maine. I'm thinking I'm going to end up in damn Canada, trying to get away from home. But, you carry the stuff that's deposited in your gut. And as I grew older and became more comfortable in my skin, home became the anchor. It's the source of the sound. There's a reason why I gravitate to Bobby Blue Blaze. There's a reason why when I get in a certain mood, I want to hear, how can you mend, with Al Greene, bro. I want it with some brown liquor. There's a reason why I want to fry some fish on Friday.
Okay.
Right? Because I was raised Catholic. And, we ate seafood every Friday because you weren't supposed to eat, because I'm on the coast. My last name is French. So, so all of this comes back. And it's, I think, working on the Baldwin book, I remember it like yesterday. I'm having trouble just starting. Reverend Barber sends me a Saints candle. It's by my computer every single day.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
He sends me a Saints candle. And I hear Baldwin's voice. And he says, if we're going to do this together, old boy, you're going to have to deal with you. Which meant I got to deal with Mississippi. I got to deal with home.
Well, and I think dealing with Mississippi brings us to our next question, one that we often ask our guests. Of course, our podcast is called Our New South, but we're always curious to know, what does the phrase the New South mean to the folks we're interviewing? And I'm curious, as someone who is from the South, who's written about the South and the nation for a long time, who's been a devoted public intellectual for a long time, what does that phrase, the New South, mean to you in particular?
To be honest with you, it's a hustle. Typically, when I hear the word New South, I'm thinking about, the way in which Atlanta is trying to figure itself in the context of the racial unrest coming out of the civil rights movement and Black Power. Right. The city that's too busy to hate. Right. So the New South imagines itself as a commercial hub that's not tied down by the disturbances that have that defined the country for a period of time, particularly in '68, or by the ugliness of explicit forms of racism, that you can do business here. Let me build, Hartsfield Airport, and it can become the hub of a certain kind of cosmopolitan energy and commerce and the like. So the New South is a rebranding of a region that supposedly indicates that the traditional divisions, the caste system or the racial hierarchy, the white supremacy that has defined the region is no more. So you can come on and do business down here now. So the New South for me often works as a kind of rebranding exercise. Now, what does that mean to me today. That's my intellectual kind of response to it. While at the same time there's white flight, while at the same time there's the deep divisions, material class divisions that track along racial lines. Right. At the same time, Atlanta is imagining itself this way. We got the Atlanta child murders. Baldwin is asking the question, what does it mean when black folk, hold the reins of power and these poor black babies are being murdered? Right. So, I understand the new branding exercise, but then there's the cultural side of it. Right. We could talk about it in terms of the sound, what does Outcast, and, that's a bit, we could talk about, a different kind of rhythm, a kind of cultural resonance, where, Atlanta, staying with Atlanta for a moment, Atlanta becomes, the Southern LA, right? It becomes a kind of center of cultural production. And, then you look at a place like Charlotte, or you look at, even, New Orleans ain't the same as it was prior to Katrina. It still hasn't bounced back. But you look at Houston, you think about Miami, which has never really been just strictly Southern. It's in the Caribbean basin. So there's all of this cultural ferment, right, and possibility that defines the region. And you see it in reverse migration. Mm-hmm. Folk leaving, the North and leaving northern and Midwestern cities and coming back home. And you see the strain because the infrastructure is not ready for them. And you see that in Charlotte, you see it in Atlanta, you see it across the South, the quote unquote New South. But initially my thinking, Doc, is it's just a rebranding. But of course, it's not just that.
And you happen to be on the board of this organization called Deep South Today.
Yeah.
How does that tie into what else you do in your work?
One of the principal movers and shakers of Deep South is Andrew Lack, who used to be the president of NBC and MSNBC. And he took an interest in the way in which I engaged in political commentary. And we've stayed in contact since he left NBC. And when I saw Mississippi Today, and I saw the import of local newspapers, what he was trying to do through on a digital platform, and really they broke the story on welfare fraud in Mississippi, and won a Pulitzer for the work that they've done in that regard, as well as exposing how these powerful sheriffs across the state are abusing power and abusing people day in and day out. It's a form of journalism that is so necessary in a moment where I don't know how we're getting information to engage in self-governing. So much disinformation circulates. It becomes difficult for us to get the information to engage in the central task that democracy requires of us. And so Deep South Today, for me, aligns my interest in journalism as the fourth estate, the question of democracy and home. It's hard for home to break through the New York Times. And it's hard for home as a thick and complex story to break through Sinclair. I grew up with the Mississippi Press. That's what my daddy used to read every day. And it was about that thin. And now it's gone. They read the Sun Herald or the Times Picayune, and it's still not local news. When I was doing all the stuff I was growing up in, my mom still has the paper clippings of me in the Mississippi Press. So I just love Mississippi Today for what it's trying to do, and that it's also reporting on my place.
Right. And, to finish up our interview today, I do want to briefly ask you one last question before we get to our rapid fire session, which is, what future would you like to see for the South as a region?
Oh, man. What future would I like to see for the South as the future? What future would if America's going to be saved, if the divided soul that has threatened this republic since the beginning That is, it imagines itself as a beacon of freedom and as a white republic all at the same time. If it's going to be saved, it's going to happen in our place. If the South can somehow take its history and its experiences as the ground for reimagining itself and reimagining itself, right? Then it could show the way, because it's in the culture, it's in the blood. It's just a refusal to acknowledge what is. And if the South finally gets there, if it finally gets there. Now, mind you, that, when we think about the Great Migration, it's not just black folk moving, it's white folk moving.
Exactly.
And so when you get those folk who were formed in Jim Crow South moving to the Sun Belt, right? That's the reason why Arizona works the way it works. There's a reason why those folk, it has that rhythm and sound, because it has its connections to where we're from. But I think if the region can, because it's the heartbeat, it's that of the country, if it can figure it out, I don't know how, but if it can figure it out, then America can, then maybe America can be the America that we imagine it to be. But I don't know. To be honest with you.
Are you hopeful?
I have to be, otherwise I would drink too much whiskey. But it's a blues-soaked hope. It's Du Bois in of the passing of the firstborn, when he says it's a hope not hopeless but unhopeful. Or it's B.B. King, another Mississippi guy. No, nobody loves me but my mother, but she could be jiving too. It's a blues-soaked hope. So, my faith is in the capacity of human beings to be otherwise. But I also understand that human beings are capable of remarkable evil. So, but they're miracles too. So, I'm a bet on the miracle side, with the understanding that who knows what I'm going to get.
I think on that note, we can now move to rapid fire questions. Just straight to the point. First off, where is your favorite place to be in the South?
Home, on my mama's couch.
Sweet tea or Arnold Palmer?
Sweet tea.
What's your favorite Southern word or phrase?
So, favorite Southern word or phrase? Oh my God, that varies. So it's either I be damn or finna. I'm finna go.
Who's your favorite Southerner, living or dead?
Oh, favorite Southerner, living or dead? My great grandmama.
What's her name?
Ruby Wilson. Best pinto beans on the planet.
Well, speaking of pinto beans, what's the most underrated Southern food?
Pinto beans.
Okay.
Right, because she would make pinto beans and whole cake bread on the top of the stove, and you wouldn't even think you didn't have any meat. You wouldn't know you didn't have meat. It was that good. It was with some sorghum syrup.
Okay. Well, next time you're in Washington, D.C., go to Salamander Hotel, where Dogon restaurant just opened, and one of their, the black chef, and one of their appetizers is a whole crab cake. It's a whole cake with this crab on top of it. It's outstanding.
That sounds amazing.
So there you go.
Okay.
Well, Dr. Eddie Glaude, I want to thank you for joining us today. This has been a wonderful and profound conversation about the South, the nation, and so many things that our listeners are worried about right now. But again, you're giving us hope in an otherwise hopeless time.
Man, thank y'all so much. This is wonderful. This has been wonderful. Appreciate you.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and nobody want to hear it, but it's like this the South got something to say.
Our New South is presented by Levine Museum of the New South. Levine Museum connects the past to the future to realize the promises of a New South. To learn more and donate to projects like this, visit museumofthenewsouth.org.
Our New South is produced by Next Chapter Podcast. Thanks to our audio editor, sound designer, and composer, Hal Murdoch, video editor, Justin Cortez, producers, Brian Douglas, Alexander Pineras, and Cliff Whitfield, senior producer and writer, Byron Hunter, and executive producers, Jeremiah Tittle and Frankie Abbott. Please follow the show, subscribe, rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and watch portions of our interviews on YouTube.
Go to youtube.com and search Levine Museum.
Learn more at nextchapterpodcast.com/Our New South.
The South got something to say.
Thanks for listening.